Immigrants 100% built America, and we should absolutely be giving them credit for that. I could literally give you 1,000 reasons why immigrants built America. They're responsible for the stagnation of minimum wage because they prioritize their small business tax cuts for cross-racial labor solidarity, fracturing the working class and blocking universal wage hikes. They're the architectures of Jim Crow. While the elites might have designed it, they enforced it daily. It was relied on their complicity and participation. They're the reason why we don't have universal health care, because they have historically aligned themselves with conservatives as a path to assimilation into whiteness. They're the reason why welfare programs have disappeared, because they keep perpetuating the bootstrap myth. They're the reason why black communities are over-policed, because they keep perpetuating the model minority myth, and they keep pathologizing black American behavior. And they're the reason for ICE, which was primarily staffed and built by first and second generation immigrants from militarized cultures. They are the co-creators of white supremacy. They absolutely deserve credit for that. You have helped build the exact system in which you are complaining about today. And the only reason that you're complaining now is because the benefits that you got from upholding the system are drying up. And now all of a sudden you don't see this country as such a great place. But it was great when black people were the only people who were being harmed by it. But now that that harm is crossing over to everyone, now all of a sudden America is a fascist country. Please. This is absolutely the country that you built. You are 100% right. Immigrants built America. Everything that's fucking wrong with it, you helped build. You have consistently worked against black people's fight for social equality and justice. So yes, you built America. Congratulations. You built a fucking ticking time bomb, and I will absolutely give you credit for that.
Immigrants did not build America. Slaves and their descendants, black Americans, built America, like quite literally with their hands, okay? Let me explain to you the issue with Shabuzi's Grammy speech. Let me start by saying that immigrants have greatly enriched this country, okay? We would not be where we are without them. However, they did not build America. And I think this is such an important distinction to make during Black History Month, because the comment, immigrants built America, is rooted in the erasure of Black contribution, okay? Specifically, Black American contribution. However involuntary it was. I understand that Shabuzi was coming from a good place when he said that immigrants built this country, but historically and factually, it is incorrect, baby. Chattel slavery built this country. And it is important to recognize that. People don't want to talk about slavery, but the reality is that slavery and the cotton economy is what gave America its legs, baby. There would be no America without slavery. The enrichment that is immigration did not come until significantly after slavery, right? Slavery dates back to the 1600s, girl, okay? All the way until 1865, where we get the Emancipation Proclamation. And even after this point, there were some Black people who were still being held captive as slaves because they just didn't get the news yet, girl, okay? So when you think about that, how long slavery spanned, okay? And the fact that we get ushered into Reconstruction and Jim Crow, and slaves are now repurposed as sharecroppers, right? Or repurposed into roles in which they are only good for service. They are only good for, functional positions that help prop up the country, not actual careers, not anything actually profitable. Like literally, Black people simply migrated from slavery into something else until we get into the civil rights era. For the people who think that we're arguing semantics, not only is this an important distinction to make so that we are recounting American history and Black history accurately, but also because the suppression of Black history, the erasure of Black history, okay, is what leads to the repetition of these atrocities, not on Black bodies, but onto others. And this idea that Black history and American history, when it repeats, that it's going to repeat with the same people, it does not. It does not. And I think we're seeing a little bit of the proof, but that will never, ever, ever change the fact that the biggest and greatest group affected by American history, affected by the American plight, and that actually built America is Black American descendants of slaves.
So there's been a popular, phrase going around on social media, immigrants built America. You hear it in debates, protests, classrooms, online arguments, like literally people saying it. The other day was Shabuzi. Now, a lot of people keep saying it. It is often used to defend immigration and to highlight the contributions of people who came from other countries. And yes, immigrants have contributed greatly to the growth of the US, but there is another side of the conversation that many people feel is being ignored. And that tension is what is driving so much discussion right now. Well, guys, welcome back again to my YouTube channel. I'm going to let the rest of the videos roll, then I'll come back with more commentary. Credit belongs to original creators of these videos. Please do not forget to like, subscribe, share, and drop your own take in the comments. So let's go watch, then I'll come back with more commentary.
Once upon a time, on a piece of stolen land, in a country built on the enslaved backs of my ancestors, there stood a grand house on a hill, a house built brick by brick on the promise of liberty, democracy, and the pursuit of happiness to only the non-melanated people. And all of the non-melanated people were given the keys to the house, or the castle, if you will, which is the foundation of America's wealth. It was laid centuries ago, not with gold, but with black labor, unpaid and brutally exploited. For hundreds of years, enslaved Africans toiled on the plantations, built railroads, constructed cities, and nursed white families' children, creating enormous wealth for white landowners and industrialists. This was America's first monopoly, the monopoly on labor, on humanity, on profit, where black people were the engine of the economy, but barred from its benefits. That's what Dr. King meant when he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, you want us to pick ourselves up by our own bootstraps, but we ain't got access to boots or straps. Make it make sense. Even after emancipation in 1865, the doors to the House of Wealth remained locked. Through policies like the Black Codes, Jim Crow laws, and convict leasing, Black Americans were systematically excluded from economic mobility, while white Americans were handed land, subsidies, and education through the Homestead Act and the GI Bill. Black families were intentionally denied access to both. Fast forward to the 20th century. After surviving lynching, segregation, and disenfranchisement, Black Americans began migrating to northern cities seeking better lives. But another door was slammed shut. Housing. Through housing, banks and the federal government drew literal red lines around Black neighborhoods, refusing to insure mortgages in these areas. This meant Black families couldn't buy homes in appreciating areas or build equity in the main driver of American wealth. Meanwhile, white families were able to buy homes in suburbs with federally backed loans, watch their property values rise, and pass down wealth to their children. To this day, the average Black family holds only 10% of the wealth of the average white family. That gap isn't a mystery, people. It's policy. Today, the monopoly continues even subtler. More sophisticated forms like corporate consolidation. Mega corporations dominate industries, pushing out small Black-owned businesses and controlling the labor markets. Venture capital. Less than 2% of all venture capital funding goes to Black entrepreneurs. School funding. Public schools are funded by local property taxes, meaning children in Black neighborhoods, already disadvantaged by redlining, often receive inferior education. Mass incarceration. The prison industrial complex extracts labor and earnings from Black communities. Wealthy, often white-owned media outlets control the stories we hear and tell, perpetuating stereotypes that hinder investment and support in Black communities. This is monopolized wealth, not just the hoarding of dollars, but of opportunity, access, voice, and time. This current system was literally built to exclude us. And y'all have the nerve to wonder why we don't want to take it anymore. We want it to be different, equal. Just because we want this systemically racist system to be replaced by an equal one, by one built on equality. What's the solution? You know what I'm going to say. Working together. We need to be working on things like cooperative economics, group economics, building Blacks, supporting and circulating Black dollars within the Black community. Teach our youth about compound interest, collective land ownership, pool our resources to purchase land and property, not just to live in, but to rent, to farm, to develop, form land trusts or investment clubs to protect ownership from gentrification, build multi-generational households, and pass property down with legal wills. Build up the Black tech world for the next generation and beyond, because that's the future. Politically, we need to cultivate new leaders and get rid of all the assimilating cowards. Vote not just in presidential elections, but in local ones, where zoning and policing and school budgets are decided. Fund and support legal advocacy groups fighting for reparations, housing justice, and student loan relief. Train young leaders to become lawyers, policymakers, and judges to protect our community. We also need to take time to heal from the trauma that comes with being Black in America, so we don't continue to take our rage and fatigue out on each other, and instead make our mental health a priority and give each other grace as we build and protect our community as one united force. They've always been afraid of our light. Remember that. The wealthiest communities didn't get there by accident. They built, protected, and passed down, not because they were smarter, but because they were willing to do anything for power. Monopolized wealth in the U.S. wasn't just about money. It was about control over us. But once you understand the game, you can change how it's played. So stop asking for a seat at that table and let's build our own table that we protect with everything that we've got. Because we've learned from Black Wall Street and from Rosewood to never let our guard down again. That's the solution. I love you, Black man. I love you, Black woman. Knowledge is power. Power to the people.
Let me start with a sentence that some of you are still scared to say out loud. America is stolen land. The receipts are historical, documented, and very much archived. Look at this image. One indigenous person, one black person, two entire histories standing side by side. One had their land taken. The other was taken from their land. That is the foundation of this country. The United States was built on forced removal, broken treaties, and genocide against native nations. Entire tribes displaced, so settlers can expand west. And at the same time, millions of Africans were kidnapped, trafficked across the Atlantic, and forced into unpaid labor that built the wealth of this nation. Cotton, railroads, the White House, Wall Street. Generational wealth for some came from generational trauma for others. So when people say, go back to where you came from, the ignorance is deafening. The audacity is wild. The call is coming from inside the settler colony. This is about truth. It's about acknowledging whose land this was, whose bodies were exploited, and how those systems still echoes today in wealth gaps, incarceration rates, land right battles, and political power. America did not start at Plymouth Rock. It started with nations that were already here, and it grew through labor that was stolen from people who never chose to be here. That's history. That's reality. And that's the read. This is the Notorious JTB, notoriously opinionated, signing out.
America was built by immigrants. We hear this all the time, but is that really true? Look, I'm a legal immigrant, but I've seen such a shift in the mentality of my fellow immigrants, especially in the last 25 years. When we first got here, the focus was assimilation, because we moved here for a reason, right? We left our home, our family, our friends, we left everything that we knew so that we could have a better life here. And that's because America could give us opportunities that our country of origin just couldn't. So our allegiance should be to this country, right? Because we've chosen it. We should want this country to succeed, and we should work for this country's survival and betterment. Somehow we went from that perspective to my loyalty will always be with my country of origin. I shouldn't have to change, and I shouldn't have to learn the local language, and I should not have to assimilate. America was built by immigrants. America was built by people who took immense risks of leaving everything behind, leaving civilization behind, to brave dangerous seas, to overcome famine, disease, and to face the great unknown, to create something out of nothing. And more recently, to take what already existed and make it better. America has been built by pioneers, not by people who come here to fly the flag of their country of origin and live off of benefits.
Versus parents are Nigerian. Black is black. Like, it's very strange to see us always trying to divide ourselves amongst the black community, because that's very much what they want us to do. Even within like with this whole ICE protest stuff going on, I see a lot of black people trying to say like, oh, that's not our issue. But it is. Because if you think they're going to stop at immigrants and Mexicans, oh, well, they're kind of letting us do this. Let's see let's see if we can get women now.
Okay, so if you really want to stand on this unity business, which I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people who are going to agree with what he's saying, I got a proposition for you, okay? A handshaking proposition for you. The flags and the bios, the cultural representation of your nation, drop that shit. Drop it. Drop the flags, drop the language, drop the tribal affiliations, the tribal culture, the tribal names. Drop all of that shit. Because how are we going to be united when you're continuing your tribalism? When you're continuing to represent the flag of your culture? How are we going to be united as a black nation? How are we going to do that when you're holding on to a separate identity? How are we going to be united when you're holding on to things that are not uniting the masses of the black collective? I just don't understand how we're going to make that happen, right? Because if we can't have our own identity, right? As a black American woman, I can't have an identity that's myself. I'm supposed to be flat black. I'm supposed to be a generic African. I'm supposed to be generic as fuck with no type of uniqueness to myself. I'm supposed to share everything I have with everybody else. So let's put those same requirements onto everybody else, right? Let's not put that on one group. Let's put that on everybody. Because I'm not really sure how we're going to unite in any other way.
When people say immigrants built America, some here, something very different. They hear the raising of Black Americans, especially the enslaved Africans and their descendants who were already there, who labored without pay and suffered brutally, and who laid much of the economic foundation of the country long before many immigrant groups even arrived. That tension is what is driving so much discussion. Okay, see guys, let's actually be very honest. Okay, the early wealth of America was built heavily on slavery. Enslaved Black people worked on plantations, they built roads, they built government buildings, they produced coffee, tobaccos, sugar, industries that made America economically powerful. They did this under violence, chains, and of course, forced labor. That is not a small, footnote in history. That is a major chapter. When we talk about who built America, we cannot skip that truth. After slavery ended, Black Americans did not suddenly, receive equity. Instead, they faced segregation. They didn't receive equality either. Discrimination came, the whole Jim Crow laws, yet they continued to build. They built businesses, they built churches, schools, culture, and of course, political movement. The civil rights movement that every other immigrant enjoyed today was not just built about Black Americans wanting better treatment. It reshaped the entire country. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and countless others, many whose names we do not even know, fought for voting rights, desegregation, and equal protection under the law. And that is where some Black Americans feel frustrated, whenever people come onto America and say, oh, immigrants actually built this country. They see new immigrants arrive and enjoy protections that were paid by with the blood, sweat, and sacrifice of their ancestors. They see people using the phrase, immigrants built America, without acknowledging who was forced to build it first, without pay, without right, and of course, without freedom. So when someone said, immigrants built America, some hear it as incomplete, some hear it as dismissive. At the same time, we must also tell the very full story. America has always been shaped by waves of immigrants. Irish immigrants helped build the railroads. Chinese immigrants worked on the continental railroad under dangerous conditions. Italian immigrants worked in, factories and construction. Jewish immigrants, built businesses and institutions. Latino migrants work today in agriculture, construction, healthcare, and service industry. African and Caribbean immigrants contribute in medicine, tech, education, of course, entrepreneurship, right? But yet, the reality is this: America was built by many hands, but not all hands had the same voice. That is the key difference. And I want everybody to actually know that, right? Most immigrant group, even when they faced discrimination, made a decision to come. Enslaved Africans, they did not immigrate by choice. They were sold and transported. That difference matters. It changes the, moral weight of the conversation. When Black Americans say, we built this country, it is not just about labor. It is about unpaid labor. It is about suffering. Of course, it is about fighting for rights, not only for themselves, but for every other person who come after them. And of course, these other immigrants are really enjoying those benefits. When immigrants say, we build this country, they are often speaking about contribution, taxes, innovation, military services, and of course, but building, you got to give it to Black Americans, right? If we are going to say who built America, then we must be brave enough to tell the full story. If this, America's story is complicated, it includes pain and, of course, progress. Between pain and progress, it also includes injustice and opportunity. It also includes forced labor and chosen migration. And you all know who chose to come and who didn't choose to come to the country. So when we say this, it's very important for us to note the fact. Anyway, guys, let me know what you all think in the comment section. Let's have that conversation, okay? And please do well to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Credit belongs to original creators of these videos. I look forward to seeing you all on my next. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. See you next time. Bye, guys.